to Senate Bill 2242. Representative Mock, were you making a request on Senate Bill 2242?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And while certainly support the bill, Senate Bill 2242 is proposed to the House, and with one amendment, we would request that we divide the amendments pursuant to House Rule 603, whereas Division A includes the amendments that are on Section 3 of the bill, amending subsection 1 of Section 54-17.8-06, and Division B would be the amendments as listed as the removal of Section 2 of the bill.
Representative Mock, just for clarification, you're leaving Section 1 and 2 as Division B and Section 3 as Division A, is that correct?
Mr. Speaker, the amendments that it would add the language on page 2 of the amendment in context before you, that would be Division A. That would be the language related to Chapter 54 of the Century Code. Division B would be the amendments that overstrike the language on lines 15 through 19.
The House will stand in recess for a few minutes. That was different than we thought it was going to be, so just give us a minute. Representative Mock, would you come to the front and explain that? The House will stand in recess. So, members of the House, Division A will be essentially the amendments that were placed on subsection 3 of the bill, and Section B will be sections 1 and 2 of the bill. In accordance with House Rule 603, whenever the report of a committee except a conference committee contains several amendments, and any member may have the amendments divided into separate divisions. Question of the adoption must be taken separately on each amendment. All the approved divisions comprise the report that is to be adopted. So the House has before it Division A. Representative Mock, would you like to?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I would request the bill carrier to explain the amendments before pursuing to debate.
Okay. Representative Sobernagel, would you care to explain Senate Bill 2242?
Mr. Speaker, I would. Division A, members of the Assembly, is the new language that amends House Bill 1278. This amendment removes the requirements that certain specific conservation groups are assured seats on the advisory board providing oversight to the North Dakota Heritage Fund. The amendment allows the governor to appoint 4 members from the conservation community at large and does not limit the scope of groups to be considered. Mr. Speaker, may I continue?
You may continue.
Our committee felt this amendment was appropriate. Since the passage of House Bill 1278, the conservation groups originally listed in the bill have continued to pursue an agenda that is separate from that spelled out in 1278. This is best illustrated by their support of Senate Concurrent Resolution 4027, which proposes another constitutional ballot measure and would capture up to $100 million each year for the Heritage Fund. Our committee felt that it was imperative that the Outdoor Heritage Fund be successfully launched and that those groups seated at the table are supportive of the mission set forth by this legislature. Conservationists around the state have expectations that a solid foundation be built for the fund, as this will be the vehicle to ensure the long-term outdoor legacy of this state. Providing a strong, supportive advisory team is a must. Again, the committee's concern was that groups not working in good faith towards the success of the Heritage Fund today will work against the intent of this initiative now that it has passed. There are numerous other conservation groups that are both interested and committed to participating and supporting this project. These groups include the Mule Deer Foundation, Wild Turkey Federation, Delta Waterfowl, and United Sportsmen. This amendment allows North Dakota's governor to bring together the strongest team possible to launch the Heritage Fund, ensuring that members on the advisory board want to be a part of the solution as opposed to creating issues, and that should be a key criterion. Mr. Speaker.
Is there any discussion on Division A? Representative S. Kelch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Mr. Speaker and members of the Assembly. Well, I think we all know how this process works. These aforementioned organizations were a part of this process. They were part of the collaborative group that put House Bill 1278 together. And every step of the way, they try to offer amendments to strengthen the bill. And we all do all kinds of things. We offer amendments, we offer alternatives, just so we can have our voice heard and have a vote on these things. What this Division A does is takes the focus away from the important issue, and that is to preserve our heritage and our legacy here in North Dakota. This is an attempt to go around the public eye, and what this ultimately does is hurts people's faith in this process and weakens the voice, the conservation voice on the conservation fund and the measure. And this is not the first time during the process that the 4 members of the conservation membership on the advisory board have been changed. As introduced, the bill had 4 members at large from a list provided by the North Dakota chapter of the Wildlife Society. This was amended to name the 3 organizations that were previously in the bill and 1 at large. This was done without consultation with conservation organizations. No other interest group, whether it's ag or energy or business, had their representation altered. So this appears to limit conservation interest representation on a bill that deals with conservation. Again, the important issue is to protect our legacy and promote conservation. And we could do well to name the prominent organizations that were originally part of crafting this House Bill 1278 and reject this division. And if anyone's paying attention and had doubts about how this works in the legislative process, they may be more inclined to take it to the ballot after seeing this. So I urge a no vote on Section 4, Mr. Speaker, or Section A, Mr. Speaker, and I request a recorded roll call vote.
1/6 of the members stand for a recorded roll call vote. Recorded roll call vote is granted. Is there further discussion? Representative Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the Assembly. As the prime sponsor of House Bill 1278, I think it's important to realize that the steering committee that put this whole concept together in the interim felt that it was a consensus and thought that everybody coming to the table would come together for one purpose, to create a heritage fund to deal with conservation, and to use that language that was in 1278 to move forward with conservation under the auspices of the legislature, the Industrial Commission, and the governor. It was very clear, as 1278 came to a vote in the House, it passed by one vote. The previous speaker voted no. If you think that the issue that really comes down is to work as a collaborative effort going forward to make sure that we have a program with players at the table that are working for the common goal, then you will vote yes on Division A, so that the governor can put individuals in place that want to be a part of this and not be hamstrung by previous language that I introduced, thinking that all players were on board, and be hamstrung by those individuals to work against the very committee that they're put on, and then still work an initiated measure. In today's Bismarck Tribune, it specifically stated, Ducks Unlimited said they aren't ruling out any run at the constitutional measure. The constitutional measure that was introduced, they still want to buy land. They still want to secure easements. They still want to spend money out of state, and they still want to appropriate money without a legislative oversight. So you tell me if they should be on there or not with your vote. Please vote green.
Is there further discussion? Representative Drevdahl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the bill carrier yield to a question?
Representative Silbernagel, would you yield to a question?
Mr. Speaker, I would.
Representative Drevdahl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Silvernagle. Striking the language on Division A, does that exclude any of those four groups from being appointed to that board?
Mr. Speaker, members of the Assembly, no, it does not. They are still included in the pool, if you will.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the House has before it Division A. If you vote green, you vote to approve the amendment the way it came from the Natural Resource Committee. If you vote red, you vote against that language. Key will be open. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Key will be closed and clerk will take the record. Final vote 68, yea, 26, nay, 0 absent, not voting. Division A of Senate Bill 2242 has been approved. The question before the House is Division B on Senate Bill 2242. Representative Silbernagel.
Mr. Speaker, members of the Assembly, Division B simply cleans up the introduction to the bill, if you will, with the following amendments. And it also removes a section. The bill, as received from the Senate, included a section which covered fishing license fees for disabled veterans. Since fees were covered in House Bill 1434, it was removed from Senate Bill 2242. And I would encourage green votes on this. Thank you.
Is there any discussion? Questions on the House has before Division B for Senate Bill 2242. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question is on the adoption of Division B to Senate Bill 2242. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Division B to Senate Bill 2242 is adopted. On the sixth order, we now have the amendments to Senate Bill 2242, including Division A and Division B before us. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. The House will be on the 14th order of business, and we now have before us Senate Bill 2242, including Division A and B before us. Mr. Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Engross Senate Bill 2242 with House amendments, introduced by Senator Olkey and other House and Senate sponsors. Engross Senate Bill 2242 is a bill for an act to create and enact a new subsection to Section 20.1-01-02 and a new subsection to Section 20.1-03-12 of the North Dakota Century Code relating to disabled veterans and hunting fees, to amend and reenact subsection 1 of Section 54-17-08-06 of the North Dakota Century Code as created in House Bill 1278 as approved by the 63rd Legislative Assembly relating to members of the North Dakota Outdoor Heritage Advisory Board. Mr. Speaker, your Natural Resources Committee recommends amendments which are passed on the previous sixth order. When so amended, recommends do pass on Senate Bill 2242 by a vote of 11 yeas, 2 nays, 0 absent, and 0 not voting. Mr. Speaker.
Representative Sobernagel.
Mr. Speaker and members of the Assembly, by an 11-2 margin, your Committee on Energy and Natural Resources recommends a due pass of Senate Bill 2242. There are two components to this bill. The first piece is related to hunting licenses for disabled veterans, and the second piece we've pretty well discussed here today. The Section 1 of this bill simply defines disabled veteran to determine whether an individual qualifies for a disabled veteran's license, hunting license, which costs $3. The definition is specific to veterans that are totally disabled. This bill is supported by the North Dakota Veterans Coordinating Council, which is made up of the 5 veterans organizations in North Dakota. It is their policy that all of their 15 committee members must all agree before supporting any piece of legislation. The second portion, as we discussed in the amendments earlier, Mr. Speaker and members of the Assembly, your Committee on Energy and Natural Resources recommended a due pass of Senate Bill 2242 by an 11-2 margin, and I respectfully request that this group do the same.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the House has before it for final consideration Senate Bill 2242. Clerk, open the key and you may record your vote. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Key will be closed. The clerk will take the record. The final vote shows 94 yeas, 0 nays, 0 absent, not voting. Senate Bill 2242 is declared passed.